Hello again. We are now discussing DCP School Gardening System's Bright Line Rules one by one. We talked about the Bright Line Rule number 1 in the previous video. If you haven't watched it, go and watch it. Every one of these components of the system, the D, the C, and the P, the design, the curriculum, and the planning, and all of these Bright Line Rules that we are touching upon in these free series have many subcomponents and details that I thoroughly discuss and teach in my upcoming paid program. But as I mentioned before, I intend to give you enough to get started by the end of this free series. If you think you might want to register into the program at the end of this free series, weeks to come still, this is a heads up so that you can figure out the money. I don't want this to be a surprise or a disappointment to anyone, okay? So, Bright Line number 1 that we talked about in the previous video is that adults are not supposed to touch the school garden during the school year. Go ahead and check that out if you haven't yet. Now, Bright Line number 2. Your school garden needs to be built, planted, maintained, and harvested as an in-school program by your students. What that means is that you need lesson plans that connect to your mandated curriculum to your garden so that you can teach growing food to your students as part of their schooling. Depending on where you live, and if you're a homeschooling parent that's homeschooling the community kids, or a regular schooling teacher, your curriculum might be slightly different, but there's always a million and one connections you can make from your curriculum to your garden. So it doesn't actually matter that growing food is not one of the subjects that you are mandated to teach. I have built over 20 lesson plans that put together thoroughly teaches kids how to grow food, which I share in my paid programs. But what's ultimately important is that you need to do it as a regular schooling, as part of the regular schooling. Now, here in Ontario, Canada, we call programs that happen during the school hours in school, and those outside of school hours, like on lunchtime or after hours, we call them extracurricular or sometimes simply clubs. When I say in school, I mean during instructional time, the time that you regularly teach kids in. And clubs usually, especially here in public schools, are casual, fun, and non-mandatory. In some private schools, the parents directly pay for these clubs for their child, therefore their child feels obligated to attend. And similar situations are sometimes arranged for clubs in public schools. For example, for music clubs, it's usually an implicit agreement that students need to attend regularly or they're out of the club. Simply because it is, as a member of a band, if members of a band just come willy-nilly, they can never cohesively play the music. And similar things should happen for your gardening. You need to be able to count on the number of hands that are helping hands in the garden for 2 reasons. 1, growing a school garden takes knowledge, which is the theory you teach, and discipline in practice because it follows Mother Nature. It follows a schedule. Number 2, continuous learning is part of what you're achieving in your school garden because the main purpose, remember, is to teach your students how to grow food. So if 5 students show up in the first day of a casual club when you're teaching about seeds and another different 10 students show up in the second class, there's not going to be a cohesive continuous learning happening. So bottom line, based on, hopefully the clear definitions that I just shared with you, your school garden needs to happen as an in-school program and not as a club. And that is another bright line that we follow in the DCP school gardening system that will achieve you spectacular results. There's a method to the madness that I teach. I hope this resonates. I'll see you soon.